A lot of people think that foreigners can't do 1031 exchanges, but they actually can.
So a 1031 exchange, what happens is that you are allowed to defer taxes.
So if person lives in another country, because you have only 45 days to find the property. Hi guys, today we have a very important topic which actually excites me as well. Not many people know that this is a big part of real estate transactions when you're getting yourself involved with the real estate in Miami. So this is Ricky, Steven, and they're gonna clarify for us many interesting questions. And I'm super excited that you dedicated your time to us today.
Thank you for having us here.
Thank you for having us. A lot of people think that foreigners can't do 1031 exchanges, but they actually can. There's just a little bit of a hiccup for them that we don't have to go through as US citizens, but they actually can do 1031 exchanges. So a big problem that they face is FERPTA, right? So they have to retain 15% of whatever it is that they're selling and remit it to the IRS. So one of the big things about a 1031 exchange is that you're supposed to use 100% of the net proceeds of the sale of the property that you're selling to invest in a new property. So the problem with FERPTA is that you're actually taking away 15% of that money, and then you have to send that to the IRS, or if you're going to do some kind of tax planning, maybe your closing agent will hold on to it. But the problem with that is that you're not investing 100% if you're having to pay FERPTA. So there are ways around it, and that's something that we can help with, or any experienced tax professional can help with when you're dealing with the 1031 exchange and a foreigner.
Okay, let's give a simple example so people understand. If you're looking to invest 100,000 and you bought a house for 100,000, is it a good? Probably nothing you can buy with 100. Okay, just simply math. You're buying, you're making money, and then you decided, okay, now it's time to grow my portfolio, and by buying something and exchanging, that's how you're gonna save money. Right?
Right. So a 1031 exchange, what happens is that you are allowed to defer taxes when you have a gain in that aspect, such as if you're buying for 100, 3 years later that property might be valued at 300,000, and you sell it, you're going to be taxed on that $200,000 in gain. Now, your tax, depending on your tax bracket, 23.8% is the max, and then you have depreciation. You can defer those taxes.
So what is the max?
23.8%.
The max, but
Right.
based on your taxes here. But for the foreigners, they don't make money here, so
well,
it's still
there's still a max that they could reach, right? So in order for a foreigner to do it, they have to have an individual tax identification number or an ITIN. But for the 1031 purposes, that investment property that you're selling, you could defer those taxes that you have to pay to the IRS if you do a 1031 exchange successfully, which means that you sell the real estate investment property and then you're going to purchase a new real estate investment property within certain timelines. Those timelines are 45 to identify and 180 days to close, which we can go in a little more detail later.
Yeah, let's do it, because you have only 45 days to find the property and say, okay, I like this one.
Right.
And you remember, Steven, you mentioned that there is a few different options. 3 property plan.
Right, there's 3 different types of identification, which I'll let Steven go over those.
So the first one is a 3 property rule. So you can identify up to 3 replacement properties regardless of how much they're worth. So with your example, right, you bought a property for 100,000. Let's say you sell it for 500,000. You can identify 3 properties that you want to buy. You can buy one of them, you can buy all 3, you can buy 2, and it doesn't matter what the value is on those 3 properties. The other rule is the 200% rule. So you can actually identify 4 more properties so long as the properties that you identify don't total more than 200% of the value of the property that you sold. So essentially double, just to keep the math simple.
Well, remember, this is just an identification rule, right? So it's what you can utilize as the exchanger or as your client or you. You have to pick one of these 3 for the 45-day period, and you could pick it up to the 45th-day period. It's just what you're going to identify. If you only like 1 property, you only like 2, then you only need the 3 property rule. But if you want to identify 4 more properties, there's 2 rules you can use. The 200%, which states that you cannot identify 5, 6, 7, 8 properties that equal or add up to 200% or more than what you sold for. So in his example, if you sold for 300,000, you cannot identify 5 properties that add up to 600,000 or more. If it's less, then you're fine for that identification rule.
Got it. Okay. So with a foreigner, we understood you have 45 days choose your path, what you're gonna do, and then you have 180 days to close the deal, and you're moving on to the bigger projects or many small projects, whatever you decide. How long you can keep doing it?
So you can 1031 until the day you die. So we say at the firm, DTD, deferred till death. So you can always do 1031 exchanges.
And then if your kids can keep doing the same.
Right, which is the reason why we say defer till death, because you can defer those taxes up until your death, and then the moment upon your death, if you did a 1031 exchange until you died, then your heirs or your kids or grandkids will get a step up in basis, and at that moment there would be no taxes to pay.
So what's going to be the process? For example, I have a client, he's doing 1031 exchange. When I'm having the listing and I'm selling this property, I have to acknowledge the buyers, right? Or not really?
You should let them know. So if you're representing a seller, you should let the buyers know that you're doing a 1031 exchange. There's certain cooperation clauses you can put in the contract, so that way everyone's on notice that you're doing a 1031, and you can help facilitate the 1031 transaction throughout all phases of.
You know why it's important? Because if I imagine you selling, and apparently you didn't find anything, so you can maybe do addendum saying that you need a little bit more time to close, right?
Yeah, you could always push the closing of the property that you're selling, because that 45-day timeline and the 180-day timeline doesn't start until the day that you close on the property that you're selling. Mm-hmm. So if you have a buyer that's willing to cooperate with you, you could push that, and you could potentially look for properties even during closing. So you don't have to start looking for properties on the day of closing. You could actually look before you actually close.
So let's talk about process of the foreigners when you retain the 15%.
Yeah, so when he and I, if we were to do a 1031 exchange, we don't have to pay FERPTA because we're not foreigners, but foreigners do. So typically what happens is you're supposed to invest 100% of those proceeds into the property that you purchased, but foreigners don't have that luxury because they have to pay FERPTA. And that could potentially disqualify them from using 100% of their money towards a 1031.
And let's explain why they're doing that. Because it used to be people just would make money, sell, and go back to their countries. When at the closing, either before the closing, you have to give 15% to Steven, right, to the company, so they hold this 15%, or at the closing, they will take 15%.
They'll take it and send it to the IRS, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, correct.
What is better? We spoke about it, that it takes so much time to receive this 15%.
Yeah,
back.
so typically, forget about doing a 1031, let's just say you're doing a regular closing. So you submit your 15% to the IRS, it can take up to 2 years to actually get that money back. So if you're doing a 1031 and it takes that long to get that money back, you obviously aren't gonna fall within that 180-day timeline. So you're not gonna be able to comply with it. So what do? So there's two things that you could do if you're a foreigner and you're trying to do a 1031 exchange. One, which is the most common, and I mean, some people don't like it, but it's the easiest thing to do, is you come out of pocket the 15%. Mm-hmm. So let's say you're selling some real estate for $100,000, right? You have to withhold $15,000 to comply with FERPTA. So what does a foreigner do? They could come out of pocket $15,000, give it to the closing agent, and then they could invest, that $100,000 into a new property, and you'll comply with FERPTA, and you could comply with the 180-day timeline because you don't have to worry about the IRS refunding. With our second solution, what you could do is you could ask the IRS to send you what's called a reduced withholding certificate, saying that the transaction is exempt from FERPTA because you're doing a 1031 exchange. So you're technically not, you're not engaging in a transaction that's going to give you a gain or you have to pay taxes. The problem with that is the IRS is taking a really long time to get, those responses to you. And sometimes they could take as long as a year. So obviously you're going to blow that 180-day timeline. So right now, currently, the best thing to do is you have to, prepay that FERPTA, and then you could use the rest of the money towards the 1031 exchange.
Okay, and how much it's gonna cost for the clients to have this transaction done if they wanna do 1031?
So it's a...
Is it a flat fee or it's a percentage?
No, we charge based on a one-time fee for both the sale and the purchase, but also it's a scaled fee based on complexity, whether it's a forward exchange, which is a standard exchange when you sell and purchase, or whether you do a reverse exchange or a construction improvement exchange. Those are a bit more expensive because they're much more complex and much more time consuming.
Okay, so now let's move to another topic. If I live here and I want to save on taxes, For me, it's going to be more easier because I live here and it's going to be just simply 1031 exchange. Is it the difference in price?
No, it's the same price point. It's just standard exchanges, what the sales price is, when we are on notice. If we're notified 2 days before closing, there's a rush fee, how long we've been involved in the transaction. There's a lot of different factors to consider when it becomes a pricing, but it's a scaled price point. For forward standard exchange, we start at 1,750, so 1,750 is our starting price point.
Okay, so what should we cover in a regular transaction? What should we let them know?
Well, in a regular transaction, if you're actually using the FAR bar as is residential contract in Miami-Dade and Broward, at least the ones that realtors use here, there already is a cooperation clause in that contract that was help written by one of our partners, Stephen Wayner. It's paragraph 18N as in Nancy, line 521. So that clause is already in there. Once you're under contract and you're going to sell real estate investment property, you want to get in contact with us. Or if you want to purchase a real estate investment as well, because then you can do a reverse exchange. It's very common to do a reverse exchange as people don't know much about it.
So let's talk about it.
So a reverse exchange is the exact opposite of a standard forward exchange. It's when you are going to purchase your replacement property and then sell your real estate investment property, right? So we see this often when it happens in commercial transaction, industrial warehouses, land, because the sale contracts normally have longer time periods, right? So then you find a property that you need to buy and you have to buy it before your sale. So if you already know what you're going to sell, or if you have an idea of what you're going to sell and you need to purchase something that you want to purchase, you can do a reverse 1031 exchange and still defer the taxes. It's just the opposite. You're going to purchase before you sell.
And that is more expensive, right?
It is more
I remember you said that it's like that pages, a lot.
Yeah, so for example, our standard forward exchange documents is about 30 to 32 pages, and then the reverse exchange or construction improvement exchange are about 90 pages, 90 to 100 pages. The reason is we want to protect the buyer and seller, right? The exchanger, the client. So our documents are really prepared to really kind of protect that client and that exchanger, because the complexity of it is really detailed in where the exchanger is going to buy the property, but the code requires us as the 1031 exchange and qualified intermediary to park and hold title to that property until they sell the other one. So our documents are really prepared to protect the client and their interest in that property during the holding period.
And if you're holding this, for example, 15% for the foreigners, are you holding it in an account where they can make money out of that hold, if it's a lot of money?
So we don't hold the 15%. That would be the closing agent, their CPA, their attorney. We cannot provide any legal advice to them because we're acting as qualified intermediaries.
But you have a title company.
Right, so if the title company can hold the 15%, and that's held in escrow if you're doing a reduced withholding certificate, because we have to wait for the IRS to notify us either A, you can give the money back to the foreign national or the taxpayer, or B, you have to remit the payment to the IRS directly.
So if person lives in another country and 1 year passed by, and then you have to leave your account number, and then how they send, or they send the check to
right. So it's either
Mexico?
It's either we send a check or it's via wire. I mean, it depends what the client leaves the title agent with. The information that they provide is what they're going to get. So it depends, and there's been transactions where it's taken almost 2 years for the client to get their money back with FERPTA.
That's sad.
It is. But
after 2 years, maybe it's not even worth.
It is, but I mean.
Or maybe some people forget.
Yeah, no, you'd be surprised. Some people do forget. Because it's been so long, and it's understandable that they don't even remember the 15% is still there.
Yeah, for sure. And you remember we spoke about another topic that some people had the questions in our discussion before, that if you have a partner who joins you in investment properties, and what's the situation there, and they want, for example, the seller sells and now he has a partner who joins him and they want to invest and buy something bigger, what to do in this situation and how to save the taxes.
So there's a lot of different situations, different nuances about that. So let's say you're selling and you want to bring in a partner after the fact. So just to keep the math simple, so let's say you're acquiring something for $100,000 and you want to bring in a partner. That partner also has to bring in $100,000 in order to do a 1031 exchange. Otherwise, the IRS is going to look at it as if that partner is getting a gift of $100,000 in property. So you always want to make sure that your partner is coming up with at least the same amount that you are when you're buying something new.
Right, and this situation brings up a really big question that people always ask. Can you buy into a partnership interest or buy into a company, an LLC, or buy shares or buy stocks? In a 1031 exchange, you cannot. You used to be able to, prior to 2018, you'd be able to do personal property and buy stocks and bonds and shares and paintings. But now you can only do real estate investment property. So if you're selling real estate investment property, you have to buy real estate investment property, and it has to be like kind real estate investment property. Like kind does not necessarily mean a condo unit for a condo unit or multifamily for multifamily. It just means real estate investment property for real estate investment property.
So if you are selling real estate investment property and all of a sudden you decided to buy a house here where you're gonna live, right? You can.
You cannot. No, you would have to keep that purchase as a real estate investment for at least 2 years. But you could sell a condo or house and buy vacant land. That would qualify as like kind real estate, as long as it's for an investment purpose.
And what else are some typical mistakes people do?
Primary residence. A lot of people think that
Right,
you
correct.
could exchange your homestead for investment property, and you can't do it. It's got to be investment for investment. Always.
Correct. Yeah, primary residence is section 121 of the code, not 1031. Where if you own it as a single individual, you get up to $250,000 credit, or if you own it as a married couple, you get up to $500,000 credit.
And how many companies in Miami do the same or similar?
In Miami, I don't even think anyone else does it. I mean, we're probably the biggest in Miami. No, we are the biggest in Miami and in South Florida, but we're
affiliated.
Yeah, affiliated 1031.
1031.
Yes.
Yeah, me too. Like sometimes I work with the investors, and sometimes they have their own people they're working with. But yeah, me too. You meet lawyers. They do general law, but who's specializing. It's always better to work with somebody who's specializing in
Right.
certain area.
Right.
Yeah, of course.
What about new constructions? For example, recently I had a client who sold old apartment and now she wants to invest in Missoni. So it will qualify because it's not ready yet.
Right. It'll qualify if it closes within 180 days.
So if it's under the contract and they're waiting to be in a contract, it's not. But if the building almost done, but they always delayed.
They're always delayed.
So
That's
it's
the problem
very-
with new construction, but it's still the same timelines. You still have to close within 180 days.
So yeah, it's because
Unless the new construction's almost done.
almost done.
Yeah.
Okay. Even it's almost done, there is no apartments left. So
Yeah, Miami.
Or for twice the price.
yeah, doesn't make sense. Okay, you see, we're learning so many different scenarios. Thank you so much, guys, for your
course.
time. If you have any questions, of course, I'm gonna leave all information below this video, and call us if you wanna buy or you wanna sell and save on the taxes if you're
Yeah.
foreigner or local.